Welcome to the Back on Track podcast with me, Sam West. In every episode, I interview someone who's changed, recovered, or become successful after having faced real adversity in their life. What's more, at the end of every episode, guests give you a few bits of advice which you can use to improve your own life too. On today's episode is Libby Clegg MBE, who's a two-time Paralympic gold medalist and world record holder for both the T11 100 and 200 metres. At the age of just 9 years old, Libby was diagnosed with Stargardt's disease, which is a degenerative eye condition causing people to gradually lose their sight over time. In spite of this, Libby soon found her passion in the form of athletics and has gone on to create an incredibly successful sprinting career, winning a whole host of medals at Paralympic Games in Beijing, London, and Rio. However, after winning 2 gold medals and setting 2 world records at the Paralympic Games in Rio, Libby actually had a mental breakdown as she struggled to find out who she was beyond athletics and all the success that she'd created. I'm really pleased to say that Libby managed to work her way through that difficult time and is now fully focused on the Tokyo Paralympic Games, where she hopes to be standing on top of the podium once again. Aside from athletics, last year Libby also competed in the hit TV show Dancing on Ice, where not only was she the first blind contestant ever to take part, but she also managed to reach the finals and come in third place. So, without further ado, let's find out what happened by listening to her story from start to finish. And Libby, first of all, I just want to say a massive thank you for taking the time to come on the podcast this evening. I really appreciate you giving us some of your time. And how are you doing? How's everything going?
To be honest, I'm in a really privileged situation, so I'm not doing too badly, to be honest.
Yeah, you're feeling very lucky to be able to get out and do physical exercise and be around people, I guess.
Definitely. I've been really lucky. I'm still able to train most days, and I'm still seeing my training group, which is a massive element of like the social interaction as well. So I'm really fortunate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm dying to get out and have that social interaction as well. I should have been a professional athlete, but anyway, that career is gone now. Libby, I always like to rewind back to the beginning with my guests so that listeners can really grasp a guest story from start to finish. Now, you live with Stargardt disease, which is a degenerative eye condition, I believe, which causes people to lose their sight sort of gradually over time. And this process started for you at the really young age of 9. And I'm just wondering how you felt about it in the early years. Was it something that affected your life? Was it something that scared you in any way? Or how did you feel about it in those early years when it was something that you became aware of?
So for me, basically, I was struggling at school. That's how I realised there was something wrong with my eyes. And even then, to be honest, I wasn't fully aware that there was a problem. I just thought I might need glasses or, I think you just assume as a child that you're the same as everybody else. And I didn't realise that there was obviously something wrong. So I went through a series of going to opticians, going to doctors, going to different hospitals, and ended up in the eye hospital where they eventually diagnosed me with Stargardt's. But basically, I didn't really know what it meant. I was very confused. Being 9 as well, they were like, "Oh, you're going to be registered blind, and this is a degenerative condition, so it gets worse as you get older, and this means that you're now disabled." And I was so confused with what that actually meant, because for me, being disabled was being in a wheelchair. And I was so confused. I was like, "But I'm not going to be in a wheelchair. I'm not disabled. Like, I don't understand." So it was really confusing for me. And then to have that sort of label is quite a negative thing as well, because nobody ever looks at disability in a positive way. It's always seen as very negative, and it's always about what you can't do and not about what you can do. So, all these things are going through my head, like I'll never be able to drive, which was I really wanted to be able to do even at 9. Just that, to be honest, that was my priority. I will never be able to drive. So it was like really gutted. I just didn't really understand. So for me, it was like quite confusing, getting told this. And then at the same time, my family were obviously trying to deal with this news as well. And they didn't expect it, as there's no sort of family history of it or anything like that, which is quite uncommon for a genetic condition. So it's just, unfortunately, it was just a combination of 2 dodgy genes getting together and obviously made me. So basically, it was a bit hard not just obviously then everything changing in school for me, but even at home, I could sense that obviously there was, you know, conversations going on that I wasn't really privy to, and there was a lot going on with my family. So for me, I actually ended up not long after that joining my local athletics club. And that's really where I had an escape from my life, really. Because obviously my friends at school obviously knew I couldn't see very well, and it was very negative and everything had changed. And you then sort of become that little outcast because you're different from everyone else, so you need extra support. And then at home, I was actually the only one of my siblings at the time who had got the condition as well. So I felt the odd one out at home. And being at the track for me, nobody knew me, and I sort of formed my own identity then, and that's actually when I became Libby and not Elizabeth. So it was quite a turning point in my life.
Yeah, I can imagine that must have been extremely challenging, and so much information to take in at a young age, you know. And as you said, you didn't really even understand it, but it's fantastic that you found sort of a passion in athletics, somewhere where you could escape from it all, if you like. Do you think that sort of has played a part in your success, because did it make you more dedicated to athletics and make you sort of train harder? Do you think that's played a part in making you the sort of incredible athlete that you are today?
I think I just loved athletics, and it just when I run, I kind of feel really sort of free, and I just feel like I don't know, I could just let go of everything. And I think that's really what's kept me going through my career because I've been doing it a long time now. I'm pretty
Yes,
old.
yes, yeah.
But it was just the love for the sport really. And I always enjoyed, even prior to me joining my athletics club, I always loved like trying to beat my times, like running around the block and running around the park, that kind of thing. I was always like, oh, I need to do that better, I need to get quicker. So it was always a love that I had. And I think that's really, and obviously enjoyment, that's kept me going all this time.
Absolutely, yeah. You've been doing it a long time. So when did it become serious, Libby? When did it become sort of more than a hobby, get competitive, and the possibilities of sort of competing for your country? When did that start to happen?
So I dabbled in a bit of disability sport when I was about 12. So it took me 2 or 3 years to get into it. And to be honest, I had no concept of disability at all. And it was very weird for me to be involved in this world that I didn't really know anything about. And it was interesting. And I loved competing and meeting lots of different people. And to be honest, meeting kids just like myself.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I was about 14 that I actually ended up getting sort of selected for the potential program with UK Athletics, and literally just ended up going along to some squad weekends. And it was there sort of I was mixing with other athletes that were either podium potential or were podium athletes. And it was just nice to be in that environment. And that was sort of my first taste of like, oh, actually, this could be something that I could do. But I didn't think I was ever going to do it. I just thought it was for other people. And I just felt like I was always going to be on the outside of that. I never really felt like it was going to happen to me.
Well, it definitely did. It definitely did happen to you, and you've obviously become incredibly successful since. So, Libby, so you're now 30, right? I think.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
pretty old.
Yeah, no, that's not old at all. That's not old at all. So you're now 30. So sort of the process, if you like, of losing your vision is something that's been happening over the course of 21 years. If you could tell us a little bit about sort of how it's changed over time, and also, I think there'll be some people listening who will think, wow, like I'm not sure I would be able to deal with that as well as Libby has, because you're such a fantastic example of somebody that's become incredibly successful in spite of that. And I'm just wondering, is there sort of a mental mindset that you've adopted sort of since an early age that sort of helps you deal with it and has helped you become successful? Or so, yeah, if you could just tell us a bit about how it's changed over time and your sort of mental approach to dealing with it, I guess.
So I think for me, I knew that I was going to be losing my sight and that was going to be inevitable. I got told that, but I never had any concept of what that actually is or how that's going to happen. So, which is pretty scary. But I was told I was never going to go completely blind, but my sight could get pretty bad. So, they prepared me for that. And, that was okay. That was fine. And I just sort of accepted that it was just going to happen. And I was very fortunate. Well, I feel very fortunate because I've met lots of very interesting people over the years. And I feel that I'm very lucky that I've lost my sight gradually, and
Yeah.
it's not just happened overnight, because, I've been able to experience things that, people that, you know, that have never had sight have never had, or people that have just very quickly lost their sight. They've not had an opportunity to adapt. And for me, gradually losing it, it's meant I've been able to adapt over the years, and I've come up with like little problem solving ways to get around stuff. And those things have just adapted as I've got older, or used to things, or trial and error where things haven't worked out.
Yeah, yeah.
But I've always just tried to be really positive about it, because there's nothing I can do about it. So I might as well just get on with it, really. And, don't get me wrong, there's been times where, especially when I was a teenager, and, you're struggling with your identity anyway as a teenager, you want to be popular, you want to be cool. And, being blind is not cool. So it's an additional thing to sort of add in there. So yeah, I did have times where I was just like, oh, like, why has this happened to me? But it's made me, and who I am, and I've met some really cool people. I've learned to tolerate things that I would never have tolerated.
Yeah.
I've learned to be patient, and I've learned to like not judge people as well, because I've come across people that I would have judged I feel like if I had sight, and I've not judged, because I wouldn't want people to judge me. So it's been great, to be honest, and I wouldn't be like me if I could see. So it's made me who I am.
Wow. Well, I love your way of approaching it, Libby, and I love the way you speak about it. It's so inspiring. And so now, before we get into the incredible successes that you've had at the at Paralympic Games and athletics in general, I just wanted to explain something for listeners, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, because I did a bit of research, but yeah, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. So I think that I'm right in saying, so you compete in the you compete in the T11 100 meters and the T11 200 meters, and basically, so in Paralympics there are categories based on sort of disability and stuff to ensure fairness, I imagine, and that's what the T and the number does before the discipline. Is that right?
Yeah, so the T stands for track, and then the number stands for the classification. So 11 is completely blind, and you run with a blindfold and a guide runner. A T12 is you run either guided or non-guided, but without a blindfold. And T13s run individually. So T13s have the best sight, and then 11s are like the worst sight. And you have to go through eye tests and all these sorts of things. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Pretty
Thank
on
you.
point.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks. So you started off in Beijing, in Beijing and London in T12, and then later in Rio it was T11. But so I want to fast forward first to Beijing, because it was back in 2008, and you were aged only 18. And you won a silver medal in the T12 100 meters. I mean, at the age of 18, that's just incredible. How did that feel for you at such a young age, being in another country and doing so well in that competition? It must have been incredible.
Well, just the fact I'd gone to the Paralympic Games, I was absolutely over the moon with, to be honest. And being selected was just a dream come true. I had no idea, no expectation. And obviously, when people talk about, the Olympic and Paralympic Village, it's like this, like other world that you just can't really even begin to imagine. And it is really, really surreal. Beijing was incredible. I mean, just even the infrastructure of the Bird's Nest, the stadium, was just phenomenal. Like, it's nothing I've ever seen before. It was just insane. But being there for my first games, like having the experience being in the village and going into the food hall and vending machines that require fobs that you can just access whenever you want.
Free food and drink.
Anything.
Yeah. Amazing.
Everyone
I love
talks
that.
about the food.
I love that that's one of your highlights. Yeah. Asking about the silver medal winning moment. It's like the vending machines, the fobs were great.
It's just like really strange. It's bizarre. And it's literally like a little village. There's transport, there's all sorts, like zebra crossings. It's just really strange. And there's obviously people around all the time that will help you, but Yeah, the food hall was just mind-blowing. It was massive, and there's literally every type of food you can imagine in there, and you can access it at any time of the day. So it's really strange. I remember one of the girls on the squad having steak for breakfast, lunch, and tea, like every day.
God, that can't be good, can it? I don't. This also seems like, you're all top performance athletes, and there's just food on offer the whole time. It sounds like it might be quite difficult to stay on your diet and stuff.
It's dangerous, honestly, especially when they have like ice creams and freezers that are just available whenever. It's nuts. So like this, it's a very overwhelming experience, and also there's lots of other things going on. So there's like a games room, and there's normally like there's like a hospital on site where they do some like minor things, and there's like a dentist and all these sorts of really weird and wonderful things going on. So the whole village in itself is just really strange and out of this world. Then obviously going into compete is another thing. So it's either that sort of, you know, flight or what is it? Fight
Fight
or
or flight.
flight.
Yes.
Yeah. And the atmosphere in the stadium is just unbelievable. It just sort of feels like there's energy in the air. For me, I felt it was really uplifting and like just made me feel really good, and I thrived on it. And that sort of atmosphere is something that for me I really need to perform. I mean, I ended up absolutely smashing my personal best in Beijing just because I'd never experienced competing in front of such a large crowd.
Wow. So it had that much impact on you, the sound of the crowd.
Massive impact. And it's what makes the Paralympics separate from all the other events that you do, like a Europeans and Worlds and even domestics, because the atmosphere is just amazing. We had like 80,000 people in the stadium cheering you. Well, I say cheering me. They probably were cheering somebody else, but I
Yeah.
was believing it was for me.
Yeah.
So it was just really, really surreal. So it was fantastic for me, and raising my performance. I completely thrived on it. Going I mean, I got a silver medal in Beijing. I was absolutely over the moon. It was my first Paralympic Games. I couldn't have been happier, and I couldn't have asked for more, to be honest. I'd had a bit of a rough year the year before because my parents had separated, and it was a bit difficult. But it was a bit of like unease at home. But other than that, like I couldn't have been happier, to be honest. It was just amazing.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially at that young age of 18. And again, I think I should have been an athlete. Free food, free vending machines. It sounds amazing.
The dream come true. Who doesn't want that?
Exactly. And you touched on, you said there, I got a silver and I was over the moon. And I wanted to fast forward after that to London in 2012. And also it was the World Championships in France, I believe, in 2013 after that. Now, you won a silver medal at both of those events. And I'm just curious, and I guess this goes for sort of all, performance athletes. When you win a silver medal and you're on the podium, obviously it's an incredible achievement. But is there a part of you going, oh God, I wish I'd got the gold? Is that competitive nature there? Because for anyone like me or anybody watching you, they just, they think silver, incredible, an amazing achievement that most people would never, experience in their life. But for you in London and the World Championships after, was there a bit of, I wish it was gold?
So this is where like the difference was. So I went into Beijing where I was like fresh, I was new. I wasn't hungry. I didn't know what it was like to compete at that stage. So I was happy with a silver. Fast forward to London, 4 years later, home games. I was devastated. I was
Oh, wow.
absolutely devastated. I cried, honestly, all the way back from the main stadium all the way to the training like the warm up area, and which was a long walk, by the way. And I cried the whole way back. I was absolutely devastated. I'd lost the silver. I think it's like 400ths of a second. It was ridiculous. It was so close, and I was just devastated. And I just cried. It was awful.
That is incredible. I mean, and I'm sure there are a lot of athletes out there that have felt the same and have reported similar feelings. But I've never heard that before. That's incredible, and I guess that just shows the drive that you have to win, to get the top spot, no matter what, when you're an athlete. But yeah, that's certainly not what I would have expected. Was that quite difficult for you to process and get over?
It was quite difficult for me to process. I think just because I was devastated. I dedicated an additional 4 years to my life, and everybody wants to win in front of a home crowd, and I was happy, but devastated at the same time. Like I was happy that I'd, won a silver medal, but I was devastated that I'd not won the gold. And it took me a while to sort of come to terms with it. Obviously, Leon was the World Championships the year after, and I was trying to work out like what I'd done wrong the year before and the year before that to try and better myself. And there was a couple of things that I was like, you know what, I could improve my diet, I could improve my strength and conditioning program. Like there's a few different bits and pieces, and I was just like, oh gosh, like I need to improve those things. It's the little one percenters that make the massive difference. And sometimes the recovery is just as important as the training as well. So
Yeah, you hear about these 1%, the 1% improvements with top performance athletes all the time, and it must drive you mad to a certain extent to have to improve all these tiny things by such small margins. But you certainly did improve these things by not only small margins, but it seems by quite a lot. Because fast forwarding to Rio in 2016, you won the T11 100 and 200 meters. So you won 2 gold medals. And not only did you win 2 gold medals, but you also set the world record for both of those disciplines. I mean, it's just incredible. It's a staggering achievement. Could you just talk to us about how Rio was and yeah, that whole experience for you?
So to be honest, it was a strange year going into Rio. Very weird. I'll explain the lead up, and then you'll probably understand where I
Okay.
was coming from. So,
Yeah.
in the lead to Rio, I'd competed the year before in the back end of the year. It was in October of 2015 in the Qatar, the Doha World Championships, and I had a terrible, terrible time. I got injured. I'd torn my calf. I'd got ankle impingements. I was having communication issues with my guide runner, and everything just went completely wrong. And I knew that if I didn't win a medal, I was going to be taken off funding, and I couldn't compete. Basically, I'd torn my soleus, and that was it. I couldn't run, and they were like, you could potentially damage it even further if you decide to race. So I just thought, you know what, I'm going to get taken off funding, and I'm going to rehab it, and that's it. Like, there's no point risking it, because obviously the Paralympics is like 9 months away, 10 months away. So I left there knowing, no, like left Doha knowing that I was going to be off funding. I went on holiday with my friend a couple of weeks later.
Sorry, Libby, when you say off funding, what do you mean?
Like off, like lottery funding, like UK sport lottery funding. I knew I was going to
Okay.
be off the program.
I
Like
see.
nobody
Okay.
believed in me.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to ever medal. You're not going to make a team. See you later. Like,
No way. That
gone.
must have been incredibly difficult for you.
It was. So I went on holiday with my friends, and basically I knew they'd had the funding meeting, and I got a text message because my management knew that I was away. So she texted me and just said, "Look, you already know, but I'm just letting you know that you're not going to be funded." And I was like, "That's fine. I knew it was coming anyway. It's cool." And it was quite good, really. It was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. And people think it's really strange because everyone's telling you that they're telling you they don't believe in you anymore, and that's it. But I kind of thought, you know what, I've got 9 months left, give it a go. Put my training hat on, put a few new ideas together, make a few changes. So one of the first things I did was, because I wasn't funded, I couldn't fund my guide runner. So I just said to him, "Look, I can't fund you anymore. I can't pay you. So, I don't know what I want to do." At the point, I wasn't really 100% sure whether I was even going to be able to carry on, whether I was going to be rehabbed back in time, and how fit I was going to be. So I just ended up saying, let's just part ways, stay on friendly terms, and just call it a day.
Wow.
Professionally, but
Yeah.
I'd still like a personal relationship with you. So I had to have that really difficult conversation, and then I had to start putting my team together because I lost all my support services. So my doctor, my physio, my massage therapist, all these people that had worked around me, like nutritionist, everyone, had disappeared. They'd gone. I couldn't access them anymore. So I had to put my own team together. So I got my own strength and conditioning coach. I got a different nutritionist. I got my own massage therapist, and basically I ended up getting approached about another athlete guiding me, because they knew I didn't have a guide runner at the time. And Chris Clark's coach at the time, Steve Fudge, came and had a chat with me and was like, look, I think, this would be really good for Chris. So I was like, you know what, we'll give it a go. If it doesn't work out, it's no loss sort of thing. And the first session Chris and I did was great. I mean, I don't think we started running together until mid-February. So it was like a couple of months after, and it was really, really good. It just clicked. And that's when we sort of became a team, really. And it just became a bit unstoppable. Yeah, it was amazing. And I mean, even in May, we weren't sure whether we'd even get selected for the Paralympics. And every race that we did, we just got better and better and better. And it was only at the anniversary games in the July, it was the last chance that people had to qualify for the Paralympics, that Chris and I smashed the 200-meter world record. And I think that for me was like, you know what, we're going to be all right. All those things have come together and we're going to be all right.
That's incredible. From that low moment of having your funding taken away and, not being able to train on the program, to going back to basics, if you like, and building your own team and then breaking the record and qualifying for Rio. I mean, it's an incredible sort of comeback story, isn't it?
It was great. And it was strange because all that time I was going to a job that had basically been sacked from every day and having to see people who didn't know what to say to me every day. And it was so awkward for them more than me. I just kind of gave me a bit of strength, really, because I just thought, I don't care what you think of me. Like, for me, that team now that I had going into Rio, they're the team that I've still got now, even though I'm back on funding. So, I'm very loyal.
Yeah, well, you can't forget the people who are there for you in your weakest moments. And also, not only that, it's not only about being loyal. They're also the best team for you, it seems. Because since you've come together, you've had incredible successes.
Definitely. So that was like, for me, going into Rio, Chris and I were just in great shape. Like, the question that I wanted to ask myself on the start line was like, could you have done anything else? And if the answer is like yes, then you're not going to run well, like you're not going to perform. But when I got on the line, I was like, me and Chris, you might want to bleep this out. Basically,
it's fine.
Like...
you can swear on this podcast. It's marked as explicit on Apple and Spotify, so swear away, Libby. You're fine.
So literally, like, we'd done the rounds of the 100 meters first, and Chris was like, "Are you ready?" And I was like, "Do you know what, Chris? Let's just go and fuck them up."
Yeah, I love that attitude. Yeah.
And he was like, "Okay," and that was it. Like, I was just like, "Let's just go and fuck them up," and he was just like, "Yeah," and that's what we did. That's what we did.
You certainly
and
did.
It was. Do you know what? Like, when we got the 100 meters out of the way, that was the event that I was worrying about the most, because for me, it's my hardest event. Like, it's. There's no room to screw up. Everything has to be completely on point, has to be completely in sync. There's no room for error. So as soon as that race was out of the way, I was so relieved. I was just like, oh my God, thank God that's done. Like, it's finished. And it was great being on the podium. And it felt like, I don't know, it was crazy. It felt like everyone was just sort of carrying you around the stadium. Like, the Brazilian people are like football hooligans when they are in a stadium.
Yeah.
They are crazy. They make so much noise. So even though the stadium wasn't like necessarily full, it was phenomenal. Like, the noise that came from it. And it's weird. It carries you around. Like, the sound just sort of lifts you around the track. It's just amazing.
Yeah. So do you think you had that extra bit of motivation to do well because of what had happened with losing funding and sort of not being backed by the team? Do you think that gave you that extra, like, right, I'm going to prove everyone wrong?
I think so. I kind of did want to just say fuck you, like, I don't need you.
I can imagine. Yeah.
But it's so funny, as soon as you do well, everyone's like, oh, I knew you could do it. I was like, you didn't know I could do it because you didn't fund me, so you didn't believe in me. So that's fine.
Yeah. Libby, is there, so obviously, you won the 2 gold medals, you set both the world records, and, just incredible. But is there still a part of you that sort of feels a bit bitter about being dropped from the team before Rio? Is that something that you still sort of find a bit hard to compute, or is that water under the bridge and you've got over it now?
So it's completely water under the bridge. I've got over it now. And it's so interesting because now I'm like one of the only athletes that's been taken off and come back on again. And like, for me, having accountability as an athlete is really, really important. I think sometimes when you're funded and you're in the system, you don't take accountability or responsibility for your own actions, or you don't make your own choices very well because there's other people influencing you all the time. So for me, like, I'm a great advocate. If you've been kicked off funding, it is so good for you to, like, one, work out whether you really want to do it or not, but also just for you to take responsibility for your own actions. And having to answer to yourself is quite hard sometimes when you're like, you know what, that was a really, really bad decision. Like, I
Yeah.
should not have made that decision. That was stupid. But
Yeah.
like, it's different, and it's given me it. I feel like when I'm talking to younger athletes now, I'm like, do you know what, guys? Like, you need to own that decision. That was a bad one, and you need to just own it and just not do
Yeah.
it again.
Well,
And
it makes you grow, doesn't it?
exactly, like, it made me being taken off, and it made me develop and grow so much as an athlete and as a person. I just think it was the best thing that happened to me, and, like, I've got no bad blood with anybody at all. Like, I work with them all now again, and it's all fine, but it's just I've got a different outlook from other people now, and it's, just gives me a different perspective from other people, which is, I find, benefits me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So obviously, yeah, you won the 2 goals and you set 2 world records. Libby, I'm just curious, how do you feel when you set a world record? Because you're effectively, I mean, you etch your name in stone in history by winning a gold medal anyway, but setting a world record, is there sort of an added feeling of like, wow, look at what I just did? Does that make it sort of even more sweet when you set a world record?
It definitely does. Like, for me, winning the world record was like, no, you're actually the best in the world. Like,
Yeah, like ever.
there's no
Yeah.
one better than you.
Yeah.
That is it. And yeah, that's something else. Like, that, I think that probably meant more to me than the gold medal in a way, having that time. Yeah. Because not everybody gets to set a world record.
No,
It's special.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is incredibly special. It's incredibly special. And I hope it lasts for a very long time. And I hope that the person to beat it again is you and no one else. But Libby, the next sort of thing that I was really interested in your story is after Rio, you actually had, sort of some kind of a mental breakdown, if you like. And I found that really surprising, just because you think, you realized a lifelong dream. You've put your name down in history with the world record and the gold medals. I think, most people listening would think that would have been a really sort of incredible time for you after that. But it's, I read that it wasn't. And yeah, could you just talk to us a bit about that?
So after Rio, I won 2 gold medals, obviously. Very happy, lifetime goal. And, I got engaged like 2 weeks later as well. And that was like amazing. So it felt like my life was like all together, like, this is incredible. Then I had a bit of time off. I came back from a holiday, I had a bit of time off, and I needed time off. I needed a bit of a break, but it was awful. Like, I then had time to think, and athletes' lives are done in 4-year cycles, so everything's about an Olympics or a Paralympics. Like, that is the next. It's always the next thing. It's never like, oh my god, that was amazing. And I realised I didn't know who I was as Libby, a person that isn't an athlete. And I just felt like I had no identity. And it
Yeah.
was really, really strange. And I was trying to explain to people around me, like, I don't know what's wrong. Like, I just was like, they were like, oh God, that's amazing. You won 2 Paralympic gold medals. I'm like, yeah, whatever. It wasn't like I didn't care, but it was like, I didn't want to brag about it. And secondly, it was like, but that's not me. I'm not just those 2 medals. Like, I'm a person, but then I didn't know who I was. So I was finding it really difficult to sort of express myself. And basically ended up spiraling to the point where, like, I just felt completely numb. I would just sit and cry for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And it was then really difficult for my family and my friends to understand, and my partner Dan at the time, because they're like, you should be happy, like, why aren't you happy? And like, having that added pressure about having, you need to be happy because you've done this, and anybody else would want to feel this way, and you don't. I just then felt guilty for having those feelings of, like, you know like an identity crisis. And I ended up I was at the track one day, and I just burst into tears, and I spoke to our sports psychologist. I was like, look, I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm really not well. There's something really wrong. And I ended up going to my sports doctor, and then they put me in touch with a sports psychiatrist. And I thought it was all about the medals, and like I didn't know how to deal with it. But actually, it was just about me as a person. I just didn't know who I was, and I didn't know what I liked anymore outside of running, and because it'd been my whole life. And it just goes to show how important it is to have other interests outside of the track, because you know it's not always what you think winning 2 Paralympic gold medals is amazing for, like, a month, but then, it's the next thing, we're on to the next thing, it's done. Not that no one cares, it's just we're on to the next games. The next games are in 4 years, like, let's crack on. And it's that constant not standing back and appreciating stuff. It's like we're always moving forward, and yeah, no time to contemplate.
Yeah, and also, yeah, I can imagine it could probably feel quite weird because you've achieved everything you set out to achieve essentially. So it's kind of almost like, what more is there to do as well? And it's funny, I have heard a similar story to this actually. There's the British heavyweight boxing champion Tyson Fury back in 2015. He, against all odds, beat Vladimir Klitschko, who was reigning for years and years and years, was the unbeatable man. And again, you'd think that after that he'd be extremely happy and all the rest of it. But actually, his life spiraled out of control. He had depression and battled with drink and drugs and stuff like that. So it definitely is something to be aware of. Just because someone's had that extreme success, it doesn't mean that they're actually
Doesn't mean they're happy.
It doesn't mean they're happy, exactly. And
No.
obviously that's how it was for you. So Libby, talk to us about how you managed to sort of reignite the passion and pick yourself back up and get out of that low point.
So it took me about 18 months to get back to sort of semi-normal, to be honest. It's a while. I missed the World Championships in London, which I was gutted about. I did really want to compete there, but I just mentally wasn't able to. I was just too far gone at that point. I wasn't able to sort of psych myself up, and I was gutted about that because getting to compete back in the Olympic Stadium would have been amazing. But came into 2018, and I actually felt myself, like pretty much myself again. And I decided I qualified for the European Championships. I also knew at this point that I was pregnant, so
Oh wow!
I was very happy. And it was a sort of decision that I'd made. I really wanted to be a mum, and I wanted to be able to be a mum and compete at Paralympic Games.
They're two very difficult things to do side by side, I think.
I'm going to be honest, being a parent is more challenging than being an athlete at times.
Wow.
But I was really, I thought, you know what? I really want to be a mum. This is something that I really want to do. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go to Paralympic Games, and I won't care where I come. I won't give a shit, because I'll have my son at the end of the day, and
Wow.
it won't matter.
Yeah.
So for me, that was something that sort of picked me up, to be honest. Like, I had very lucky, I had a really good pregnancy, and I decided I definitely wanted to compete after I'd given birth. I mean, I was recommended not to make that decision straight away, because obviously sometimes you feel differently when you have kids. Your hormones change and your priorities change. So I was told not to make that decision. But about 4 weeks after I'd given birth, I was like at the track doing walking drills and all this sort of like crazy stuff already. I mean, I had a C-section, so I was told not even to leave my house for a week. And the third day out of hospital, I was at the park. Like, I walked into town, went to the park. I was just like, no, I'm going to do, like, I am a strong person. I'm going to do this.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what. So that seems totally crazy almost. You get told you need to wait a week, and you go straight out after 3 days.
Yeah.
I was going to say, why do you think you did that?
Because I was like, I want to get back to my life. Like, my son is like a huge part of my life, but I didn't want it to like change like my routine and that kind of thing. By the way, that just totally went out the window when he was a bit older. But but like, I was like, no, I'm determined. I'm a strong person. I want to get up. I want to go to the park. So I'm going to go to the park. And it was a nice day. And I was like, I feel capable of doing it. I'm not going to. I'm an athlete. Like, I'm a strong person. So I'm just going to do this thing. So I just did it. And like I say, 4 weeks after being in the track, after having my little boy, I went to the track and started doing my drills and like took it really easy because obviously I actually had a C-section in the end. So, you know, you have to be a bit more careful. Um, so, you know, it was fine. I took a lead on what the physios were saying about not doing too much, but I was determined to go to the Dubai World Championships that were I think they were in October or November of 2019. Can't even remember what year we're in this year.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
so I was like, I'm determined to go. And my little boy, like my life's changed in terms of like priorities. So obviously he's my number one priority. But, you know, I thought if I'm going to go to training, like it needs to be really focused because I'm missing time with my son. So everything now is just a lot more organized. It's a lot more structured. I My training's a lot better in some ways just because I'm there and then I leave. You know, I don't sort of fully immerse myself in track life. So going to the World Championships and just competing for me was like a massive achievement. Like I was
Of
so
course.
happy.
Yeah.
And obviously Tokyo was supposed to happen last year, and I was hoping to take my son and, you know, get him to come and watch me compete. And to be honest, even now, just being there, like I would just be happy with that. But obviously, the competitor in me wants to be back on the podium, preferably on the top.
Yes, yeah, I
But I'll
can
be
imagine.
happy.
Yeah, and it's funny, Livy. So this kind of takes me into the next thing that I wanted to ask you about, because instead of going to Tokyo, a very different opportunity came along in the form of dancing on ice. And now, not only were you the first ever, you know, sort of visually impaired contestant to ever take part, but you also came third. I mean, you know, that's an incredible
Didn't
achievement.
do too bad.
Not too bad at all. I mean, that's incredible. Could you tell us about your decision to take part in dancing on ice and how it was for you in general?
So I think it was about a year prior to the Paralympics going ahead in Tokyo. So it was probably around the summertime in 2019. So not long after I'd had Edward, actually, I got approached about doing dance on ice. And I was like, oh, I don't know, like it's quite high injury risk. Like I'm not sure. Paralympics, like priority. And then I kind of thought about it and I was like, do you know what? Like this opportunity might not come around again. You need to just go for it, see what happens. If anything, it'll help me get into shape because of all the skating training.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. So I kind of felt like I needed to not say no to opportunity. I needed to say yes to stuff. And it was a fantastic experience. I was so lucky. Like my skate partner, Mark Camretti, was a world-class ice dancer anyway. So we had that athlete like camaraderie going on. Like he got me, and I love training. So I did do a lot of training. I'm not gonna lie. Some days I was training like 6 hours a day, 7 hours a day.
Do you think you took it a lot more seriously than some other contestants?
It was me and one of the contestants that took it very seriously. That was Ben Hamlin, the magician. We were like demons training, and also because I'm an athlete, like I'm able to train a lot longer. It was not the same as athletics training, so it was less intense on the body. So like it wasn't that bad. But I loved the training side of it. I just hated the performance. Like I really struggle to be like fake. And for me, like pretending that I'm in love with my partner, which I'm not. Like when I skateboard, I'm like, I'm not gonna look into your eyes like I love you. I don't love you. It's weird. And I'm not gonna have that weird feeling with you. That's just strange.
Is that really difficult? Because I imagine I would feel awkward doing that as well. Is that awkward? Yeah, with your partner
Yeah.
sometimes. Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't want to look at you like that. That's just really weird. No. So I struggled with that part of it. That side of it sort of let me down, but it's fine. But I love the whole thing, and I was just so happy to get to the final. And for Mark as well, like he's had like older ladies before that are maybe a little bit more fragile. So I was so happy to get him that far as well because he really deserved it as well. He's very good at coaching, and for me, he's like the best skater. So I'm like, Obviously, I'm a bit biased.
Yeah, well, it was a fantastic achievement, incredible. I'm just wondering, Libby, if you noticed after Dancing on Ice, sort of your profile changed. Did you sort of, get more followers on social media and get more people interested in your career? Was there an increase in sort of press activity around your athletics career? And was that also maybe a reason that you got involved in it? Because I assume that that's something that athletes maybe tend to think about, sort of diversifying their career in some ways and building their profile. So yeah, if you could just tell us a bit about that.
So part of like obviously being on Dance on Ice, it was great for me to profile visually impaired people and what we're capable of, because being registered blind or having any level of visual impairment is such an invisible disability. People can't actually see it. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity for me to show what blind people are capable of, and also that not all blind people look blind. I don't look blind most of the time, unless I'm having a very bad eye day where I'm tired. But like most of the time, I don't look blind, and people get very confused by that because they want you to look like you can't see, and that's not actually the case with the majority of genetic eye conditions. So it's quite confusing for the public. So I thought it'd be a good platform for me to raise a bit more awareness to that. I had some mixed opinions on that. I did get trolled a lot on social media. It was
Really?
fine. I did, yeah. But you can't please everyone. Not everyone can like you, so that was fine. But I got a lot more followers, and a lot more people are following my career now, which is great. But also I've been asked, to do, different press things. And like around stuff to do like coronavirus and obviously the games, and I've made some really good contacts with like local radio stations and things like that. So it's been good for me in that sense as well. But in terms of like being a celebrity, like I am not a celebrity. I'm a normal person, just like everyone else. I just have a really cool job, and that's it. Like I'm normal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love that, one of your reasons to, for taking part in Dancing on Ice was to sort of, raise awareness around some of the things that you mentioned there. That's, obviously that's a great reason to take part. Now, Libby, the question that I wanted to sort of finish off on, or the second to last question I wanted to ask you was obviously about Tokyo, because it was meant to be in 2020, and obviously you would have been training towards it, and then it didn't happen. And obviously now there are probably some question marks surrounding whether it's going to happen this year or not. So yeah, where are you at with your training, and yeah, how are you feeling about it all?
So I was absolutely gutted that it didn't happen last year, just because coming off the back of Dance on Ice, I was in incredible shape. I was very, very good condition for myself. Like considering I had a baby, I was really good weight. I was really strong. So all the ice skating had actually really helped me. So I was devastated when obviously the games didn't happen. But also, like I was actually planning on, winding things down, probably retiring after Tokyo. So I was a bit gutted that didn't happen either, because then I knew I had to motivate myself for another year. So not gonna lie, I ate a lot of biscuits and a lot of chocolate and a lot of bread um, during the first lockdown. And then as soon as things started to lift again, like I felt a little bit more optimistic and I got back into a better training routine. So like for me now, coming into the new year, and obviously knowing that we've got, well now, like just over 6 months, like 8 months left to go to the Paralympic Games, I feel a lot more optimistic and I'm feeling more motivated than before. So, and it's nice to get back into it. And I do think I'm in a really lucky position where I am able to still train.
Absolutely. Yeah, most people are not even able to sort of get out and take part in team sports at the moment and stuff. And so I love that, though, that as a professional athlete, you kind of realise that privilege, I guess, that you have in these moments that are hard for some people that can't do those things. I love that you sort of reflect on that. So, what do you think the chances are of repeating the successes of Rio in Tokyo, Libby?
I'm going to be honest, my life's changed a lot. I have no idea. Having another person to think about that is quite demanding, does take up a lot of my time. But I'm planning on, repeating my performances. I'd love to be on top of the podium again. It was such a good feeling. And I'd love to do that with my son, being able to see it as well. Probably
Of
won't
course.
remember it, but be there.
Yeah.
If not there, watching me on the telly. But I think just for me as well, just being able to sort of close that sort of chapter of my life as well, it would be great to do that on a high.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So have you
reaching
got
the pinnacle.
Yeah. So have you got plans for, because you said you might have retired after Tokyo. Do you know what you might like to go in after athletics?
I have no idea what I would like to do after athletics. I'm not too sure. I might go into a bit of mentoring, and I do a little bit of youth support at the moment, where I go do some voluntary work in the community, which I really enjoy doing.
Fantastic, fantastic, and an incredibly good thing to do, obviously, of course. Libby, it's been a pleasure having you on. I really appreciate you giving us the time this evening and explaining your story in so much detail. A way that I like to finish off the podcast is by asking guests to give listeners just a few bits of general advice if they ever find themselves going through some tough situations. And you've had your fair share with the breakdown after Rio, being sort of dropped from the team and all the rest of it. And I'm just wondering if there's any bits of advice that you'd like to share with listeners that might help them get through some tough times.
So, for the best advice I can give anyone going through some tough times and they need a little bit of a lift, was one of the main things that helped me was having a bit of a routine. So making sure I went to bed at a certain time and getting up at a certain time. And then when I got up, that I made sure I had a shower, had my breakfast, and sort of had like a few little different bits and pieces that I did just to sort of get me going in the day. And then something else that I found really helpful was that I had a daily positive thought. So at the end of the day, I thought of something positive that had happened in that day.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. I've not heard anyone say that before, but I guess it
Yeah.
kind of sort of makes you think in a positive way and teaches you gratitude, things
hmm
that you are thankful for, and I
Even
cert
something that like small, like having a cup of coffee sat in your garden on like a bench. Like that's a nice thing. Just think of those nice things, those little positive things.
Absolutely, yeah. Focus on the positive things and also routine. I totally agree. It's such an important thing, especially during lockdown, because if you don't have a routine, it's kind of just Groundhog Day every day. The days blend into one, and that certainly makes me feel quite down. And that's something that I'm trying to do in lockdown now as well. Can sort of wake up, go for a run, and have breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the same time. Those kind of things. It just giving your life structure definitely helps. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that one.
Yeah. And I think the other thing I would suggest as well is just making sure that you talk to your friends and your family or anyone really close to you. Make sure that, you're letting them know really how you're feeling because, we often ask people like, oh, are you okay? Or how are you? But we never really listen, we never really listen to what people are saying. And people always just go, oh, yeah, I'm okay. But actually, you know, maybe digging a bit deeper into that would be helpful because everybody just goes, "Oh yeah, I'm all right," because it's just a normal response. But a lot of the time people have got other things going on, and it's just the easy answer because they don't necessarily want to burden you with other things. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a really important thing. And that reminds me actually of the mental health campaign. I'm not sure whether it was Time to Change or someone else, but I think it said like ask twice, and it's that idea of, because everyone does just say, yeah, I'm fine when you ask once. But yeah, if you go a little bit deeper, sometimes you can find that, people are struggling and yeah, communication is key, especially during these isolating times. So yeah, some really useful and practical bits of advice there, Libby. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much for coming on.
thank you for having me.
That's it for today's episode, guys. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe. It really helps the channel out, and also that way it makes sure that you never miss an episode. If you've got a story you want to share on the Back on Track podcast, get in touch, give me a shout. I'd love to hear from you via info@backontrackpodcast.com.